against you or anything like that. That is not the purpose in this. The purpose in this is to make sure that you're essentially keeping the diary in such a scientific form as is going to actually be serving your purposes, and also give you input on things that you might want to adjust from the point of view of somebody who's already gone there and been down that road. But again, if you're doing your own personal practices on your own without going through a system of this kind, you may want to consider, if you do find yourself coming across various spiritual insights or sort of discovering things that really work really well, or what have you, like you have great examples of rituals that came off and actually had an effect, or you were able to evoke such and such an entity or whatever. It might be nice down the road to have that intelligently enough written, or clearly enough written, that you can either recreate those results or share it with somebody else so that other people can benefit from that, so we can all sort of share with these as to some extent a scientific sort of record. Or just so that you yourself can go back and look at it at a later date and not be like, crap, I can't remember for the life of me what I did there, or what have you. So you even for yourself, again, down the road, in hindsight, when you're looking back at your own records, you may be writing things in such a way that you're convinced, oh, okay, I'll know what I'm saying here, and I understand, even I'll use this shorthand and I'll understand what that means, and I get what I'm talking about here. Especially when you get into more abstract sort of terminologies and stuff like that. So down the road, you might go back and look at it, and I've had this experience where I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can't make heads or tails out of it sometimes. And I'm not sure if I'm talking about a literal situation or sort of some kind of metaphorical thing, or, so this can be problematic. So this also takes a little bit of practice over time with the diary. Learning what you can go back, like what the best language to use is. Obviously you want to be concise, because you don't want to be writing pages and pages of something that could probably be written in a paragraph or one page. That even is dependent. Sometimes it's better to have pages and pages, depending on the circumstances. Next up it says, the book of John St. John, published in the first number of the Equinox, is an example of this kind of record by a very advanced student. It is not as simply written as we could wish, but will show the method. Now this book was, John St. John is Aleister Crowley's record that he intentionally kept with the intention of it being published, and it was after he'd already had the key experience of the Thelemic path, which is the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, which is essentially communion with the higher self, to simplify that. He used the term knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. He said at one point that he liked that term because no serious, intelligent person could take it seriously. So it's something to take with a grain of salt. We say knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. We refer to this Holy Guardian Angel, and we don't dictate what that is or what that means per se. You work towards, that essentially is a general goal towards which you work without having to define it from the outset. Because again, going back to the whole idea of just being able to see a small part of the picture, if you're assuming you're already seeing the whole picture, if you already have preconceived notions about how things are going to flesh out, that's only going to provide you with a limitation to how much farther you can go along. There's actually a line from, I'll take this out now, from the Book of Lies that I really love. It's just a sentence or two, but it's one of those ones that I always go back to, which is, the more necessary anything appears to my mind, the more certain it is that I only assert a limitation. So by having a belief, for instance, I believe that the universe is this, I believe that God is this, or I believe that there is no God, or I believe that X, that at some point will only serve as a limitation to your understanding, beyond which you're not willing to go. So to some extent, I think as a magician there's a requirement or a necessity that you learn to not have to rely on having a solid belief in that sense. We don't have that sort of luxury. You've got to sort of allow yourself to grow and adapt and learn and evolve. and you can't let, you don't really want to let those kinds of limitations be a problem for you. And there's also, I'm going to read this just because it's a really beautiful, poetic version of that line, which is, I slept with faith and found a corpse in my arms on awaking. I drank and danced all night with doubt and found her a virgin in the morning.
So you have to keep sort of like an agnostic mindset.
I believe so, yeah. This is, again, is dependent on, you know, anybody can have their opinions, and so to some extent I'm stating my opinion here, so keep that in mind. Now, where are we here? The more scientific, just to make sure I'm not skipping anything. Yeah, the more scientific the record is, the better. Yet the emotions should be noted as being some of the conditions. Let then the record be written with sincerity and care. Thus, with practice, it will be found more and more to approximate to the ideal. So again, at first, you can keep track of everything you can and just do the best you can with it. And over time, you're gradually going to hone this down, and it will become more streamlined and more focused and just using information that is relevant to you. But this comes with work. This does not just happen over the weekend. So again, the book I was going to refer to, which has the John St. John, is Aleister Crowley and the Practice of the Magical Diary. You can probably find it online as well. You can find pretty much everything by Crowley online, I believe, for the most part. This contains John St. John, which was Crowley's record as he was trying to attain, go through the knowledge and conversation process after he'd done it initially already years before. And it also contains a Master of the Temple, which is one of his students, Charles Stanfield Jones, aka Frater Rahad, who, when he first joined the AA, he was keeping his record, and Crowley ended up, it was sent to Crowley. Crowley was giving him notes and sent it back with a summary and that sort of thing. And this is a good portion of that diary that is included in this as well. Both of which were used as sort of examples of well-kept diaries, and what examples of good strengths and problems that appear as well. One of the things I just read in that last line was, yet the emotions should be noted as being some of the conditions. Now, when it comes to emotions, obviously that can be a two-edged sword, because we want to keep track of your emotions. We want to keep track of what kind of state of mind you're in. We want to keep track of all these things. At the same time, you don't want to get too flowery and off base with things and lose track of the scientific nature of the thing, because that's not necessarily going to help you. You're going to go off into la la land, and it's no longer going to be a scientific record, which means it's not necessarily going to help you in the same way. I want to read a couple of passages from Master of the Temple, because it's got Crowley's notes to Charles Stanfield Jones's stuff here. So I'm just going to look for the pages I'm looking for here. And just as a couple of examples, here's a passage. Actually, this is a nice one just because of the fact that it's some of the conditions under which you may be working. Because one of the problems that a lot of people run into is, I don't have the right conditions for doing magical practice. This is very common, especially living in the city, because a lot of us just live in small apartments, maybe shared spaces and that sort of thing, or you just may run into various problems when trying to do magical workings, or any kind of practices. In this case, Charles Stanfield Jones was living in a tent with his wife and child in BC. So this is July 9th, 7:20 to 7:24 p.m., or sorry, a.m. Dragon, by which he means dragon position, which is the position that he sits in for his yogic meditation practices. Rather bad. Tried to do practice outside in the rain, there being no room in the tent. Note, man, wife, and baby together with all one's earthly belongings in a tent 12 foot by 10 foot in wet weather is certainly a record. Crowley's note